So let me talk a little bit more about sort of this, how authors typically will fund their books. And again, just important things for you to know as you think about yourselves as owners here. So again, these new models are really, really great for authors, but they also have some challenges, right? In some ways, again, you get all the upside of this work, but one of the things that changes is the bank's gone. So you have to figure out how to cover your costs through models like this as you sort of think about publishing. So the typical costs, again, it depends on who you ask, but I would say for a well-produced book, typically they range anywhere from some people can self-publish for lower costs if they have talent and they're artists and stuff like that and designers, but the general range here in the market is about $4,000 to $10,000. I don't know why the internet connection is so unstable in here. I give up. Anyway, so the challenge in this way is that sort of like figuring out those costs in those ways. And so again, what that has meant is that authors are able to fund those ones rather than having the bank side of things, but they have to figure those ones out. Again, those go to the costs that you might expect. Cover designers, editorial is probably a big chunk of it, having someone to read, give you feedback, copy editing, those sorts of things, marketing costs, typesetting, all those sorts of costs behind it. So typically there's sort of, again, two models. I think the first one is sort of the full self-publishing, where again, you decide to be the author. Typically the way that works is a self-funded model, where the author will sort of say, I've got my cover designer, I've got my layout designer, I've got my editor, my copy editor, I'm going to pay you up front, you're going to do the work for me, and then my expectation is to hopefully make it up on the back end or not, right? So that idea is sort of the upfront funding. The other extreme you're seeing kind of on the other side of it is a new model where you're starting to see sort of more of this sort of unique funding models for things, which was sort of more of using crowdfunding or pre-sale as a tool to do it. So up front, rather than sort of paying money out front, you basically use the power of your audience to fund your book much earlier. So the best analogy that I can use for this one is sort of similar to thinking about concerts. So how many of you guys have been to a concert in the last few months, right? So how much before the concert took place did you buy your tickets? A few months? Right. So were you mad about the fact that you paid this money and you didn't get anything for a few months? So that's kind of what has happened today, is that model is being employed by more and more creators who sort of say, listen, if you like this idea, you're going to fund it up front and I'm going to give you the product a few months later. So that's kind of what you're seeing today, is how today's best creators are doing it. They're sort of going out and again, getting the audience, getting fans of theirs to sort of again, pre-buy tickets to the show, and then they're going to deliver the show a few weeks later. So again, this is an example of some of the authors that have done these sorts of things here using Indiegogo, but this idea here of sort of selling the book before it's done and then delivering the book after it using the proceeds to help you in that regard. So again, those are kind of the differences between those two sorts of pieces behind it.